A very big hello to my super cute champions out there. I hope all of you are doing awesome, and I also hope that we are in full josh for topping boards 2026. So some of you might be thinking that, ma'am, exam is in the month of February. Chill, ma'am, chill, we'll study later. But let me remind you one very important thing, that is the days might go like this and you might not even realize. Why are you saying so, ma'am? Because ma'am has also been in the same position. And at the end of the month, we will be having syllabus piling up and our anxiety and BP is going to increase. But the only thing that we actually want to increase is just our marks. So make sure you're starting to take those baby steps from today onwards. I do not want you to invest so much of your time. Just give me 1 hour from your tight schedule and invest it over here, because we are teaching you the chapters in the form of questions and answers. So by this, you are understanding the concepts and you're also solving the previous year questions that have come. The sample question paper, the questions that have framed by CBSE itself over here in this particular video. Don't you think it is going to be useful? Obviously, yes. So what are we waiting for? Let's get ahead. And my dear children, today I'm going to deal with control and coordination. This is a super important chapter. You may get a different level of competency-based questions from here, because yes, we all know concepts are there, but it's more about practical approach. You might have studied why do we move away your hands from the hot pan. So you should be knowing the concept behind it, right? So this is how the competency-based questions also gonna come. Okay, they might add some mirch masala extra to it and give it to you, but you should be making sure that your preparation is super strong, such that this mirch masala is not going to affect you at all. Yes, so I'm going to make sure of that, and you just have to do one very important thing. Listen to my lecture carefully, and if at all you think that you like this lecture, do not forget to hit on the subscribe button, my dear children, and share it with your friends as well. Starting with the first question that we have, this came as a previous year question in the year 2024-25. Now, name the parts of the hindbrain of the human brain. Which part of the hindbrain controls involuntary actions such as blood pressure and salivation? First of all, when you read the question, break it into parts. The first part of the question ends up over here. Name the 3 parts, or name the parts of the hindbrain of the human brain. That is the question. So hindbrain lies over here, my dear children. This is your hindbrain, and it is having 3 major parts, and it goes like this. One is cerebellum, which is over here. It is the second largest part of your brain. Cerebellum, okay, not cerebrum, it is cerebellum. Now there is one very important thing. You call this as pons, and the last one, which is known as medulla. These are the 3 parts of your hindbrain. We have given the answer for the first part of the question. Now we are going for the next part. Which part of the hindbrain controls involuntary action? Involuntary means something that is not in our control. Okay, for example, I am seeing a food and I am salivating. Okay, I'm salivating. Is this under my control? No, it's my brain giving the signal, and it's my brain telling, okay, salivate, salivate. You get it? So those are known as involuntary action. Suppose over here, I have a pen on this hand and I want to pick this up. I picked this up. This is what voluntary action. I am able to control it. So there are some actions which are involuntary, and there is a part of our brain that controls the involuntary actions, such as your blood pressure, your salivation, everything. What is that part of your brain? That is the question. So the answer to that question is given right over here. Always remember, M for medulla and M for the major part of the brain. So why is it known as the major part of the brain? Because it controls a lot of things, your heartbeat, your blood pressure, salivation, vomiting, everything which is non-voluntary is controlled by this guy, that is medulla. You call it medulla oblongata. Okay, and with that we got the answer, but we should know how to answer it as well. We know the answer, that is a different thing. We should know how to write the answer. So there comes these 3 points. So over here, the hindbrain of the human brain consists of 3 main parts. You give your answer. This is your first part of the question. Now you go to the next part of the question. You put, this is point 1 and this is point 2. The medulla oblongata controls involuntary actions such as blood pressure, salivation, heartbeat, breathing. Can you control your breathing? Yes, to a certain extent. But my dear children, who is the actual one who controls it? Is the medulla oblongata. okay, and other reflex activities such as swallowing and vomiting, etc., etc. All of it is controlled by this particular guy, medulla oblongata. Write your answer like this. You will get those short, how many marks? 2 marks for this particular question. Okay, now if you show conjugacy over here, you do not write the entire thing, you will be losing up your marks. Cool. And with that, I would want to go back and tell you the function of this guy also. Cerebellum, which is there, it is responsible for posture and balance. Okay, so you can always remember this by the spelling. So cerebellum has 2 L. The L looks like this straight, right? So it's talking about the posture. We should not be like this. We should be like this. So posture and balance is controlled by cerebellum. So people who drink alcohol, you might have seen they walk like this. Why? Because it's the cerebellum that is getting affected, which is why they are not able to maintain the balance. Okay, so these are the 3 things that you need to know. Now 3 or more things. Okay, now we are going to go ahead with the next question. I hope that question is clear. As I said, if you're liking it, what do you have to do? Click on the like button. Next question: how is the movement of leaves of a sensitive plant different from the downward movement of roots? This is again a 2-marker question. This came the previous year. So they're asking you how the movement of leaves of a sensitive plant. What is the movement of a leaf of a sensitive plant? What is the sensitive plant? It is none other than touch me not plant. Have you seen the touch me not plant? So it looks green such as all plants, okay? And if we touch it, it closes, which is why we say touch me not, because it does not like it. Well, there is a scientific name to it as well. We call this as Mimosa pudica. What is it known as? It is known as Mimosa pudica. Now, the movement of leaves when we touch it, it closes up. It just closes up. How is that different from the movement of roots? The roots, if at all you have seen, my dear children, they grow towards the soil, right? They grow towards the soil. Have you seen roots coming up, popping up like that? There are exceptions, that is different. Generally, the roots go downwards, right? So they are asking you, how are both these movements different? That is the question. So over here, we will go ahead with the first part of the question, that is, we'll answer about the sensitive plant first. So this is a sensitive plant, that is touch me not, as you can see, it closes up. Now over here, what is the stimulus? There should be some stimulus, which is why it is getting closed up, which is why it is showing some reaction, right? The stimulus is something that will make me react to something. For example, over here, there is high temperature, which is why I'll feel hot, which is why I'll which is why I'll start to sweat. So what is hot over here? Is the stimulus. The temperature which is over here, it is the stimulus. Similarly, over here in this particular case, when I touch, my touch is the stimulus. The first point that I would be having is what? The movement of leaves of the sensitive plant takes place in response to stimulus of touch. Okay? In the case of the roots, my dear children, it will be something different. We will be talking about that as well. This movement is known as nastic movement. This movement is known as nastic movement. Why do you call this movement as nastic movement? Because it is not, the leaves are not coming towards you, are they? Or the leaves, are they going away from you? No. They are just closing. It has nothing to do with the direction, which is why we call these type of movements as nastic movements. Okay, if it was towards or if it was away, we would call them tropic movements. But since it is not, does not have any relation to the direction of the stimulus, I'll call them as nastic movements. Now, it is non-directional, already told you, and occurs due to change in turgor pressure inside the leaf cells. What do you mean by that? Suppose this is a cell of the leaf. Inside that, you know, there is vacuole and things like that. There's an organelle which you call it vacuole. And this vacuole is filled with what? Water. Okay, suppose a chemical signal comes over here. A chemical signal comes over here and tells the cell to release the water. To release the water, do you think the cell will look like this now? No, it is going to be shrunken. It will be shrunken. So over here, in the case of Mimosa pudica or touch me not plant, when we touch, there is a chemical signal that is happening over here. There are so many chemicals which are being released, which is why one very important thing happened. These chemicals tells the cells, okay, tells the cell which are over here, okay, which are over here in the center region. As you can see, suppose this is a part, midrib, and over here towards this side you have a leaf, towards that side also you have a leaf. And now you see a swollen part right over here. This part is known as pulvinus. Okay, what do you call this? Pulvinus. Pulvinus is made up of several cells, each of them having so much water content within them. This water content basically makes the cell to be in shape, and the pressure that the water exerts on the cell wall is known as what? The turgor pressure. Okay, it is known as the turgor pressure. It's because of the turgor pressure they are in shape. Now some chemicals come because of the stimulus, that is touch. Some chemicals become active and they tell the cells to please release the water. Now water is being released, all the cells are shrunken, which is why what will happen, my dear children? The normal leaves which were like this, they will now close because the water is being lost. So that is the funda behind it. Okay, so the closing happens because there is a change in turgor pressure. Why do you think there is a change in turgor pressure? Because the stimulus was there and it caused some release of some very important chemicals. Now, yeah, it is not due to growth. Remember, this particular type of movement does not have anything to do with the growth of the plant. When we touch, it closes. That's all. Now, I'll give you an example where the movements are related to growth as well. Okay, for example, roots, when they move, they are moving inside, and while they are moving, aren't they growing? Yes, that's how they are able to move, right? So that is a growth movement. We are going to talk about that in the next part of this particular question. So this part of the question, I hope it's clear. You have to remember three important things. That is, the movement happens because of stimulus of touch. This is nastic movement, not tropic movement. Why? Because it's not towards and away. It's just independent of the direction. That is why it is nastic movement. And why is it happening? Because there's a change in turgor pressure and it has nothing to do with growth. Okay, so these are the things of sensitive plant. Now we go ahead with the term, that is what you call, with the content which is of roots. What is different over here in the case of roots? So my dear children, the roots which are there, for them the stimulus is gravity. Where is gravity going? It's like this. Okay, gravity is over here, right? So basically roots are moving towards the gravity, which is why we say that they show positive geotropism. First of all, I'll come to that. These type of movements where it is moving towards or away from the stimulus, you call these movements as tropic movements. Okay, now the specific type of tropic movement where the stimulus is gravity, you call this as geotropism. Where the stimulus is gravity, what do you call? You call this as geotropism. Now since the roots are moving towards gravity, you will add the term positive geotropism. Got it? What about the shoot? They always move up, right, against the gravity. So we will say that is negative geotropism. You got it? So this downward movement of roots takes place in response to the stimulus of gravity. This type of movement is known as tropic movements, more specifically positive geotropism, because roots grow towards the direction of the stimulus. So over there it was non-directional, here it is what? Directional. And here, first of all, you say that the difference of stimulus, then you say that is nastic, this is tropic, then you say it is directional, and that one, the previous one was non-directional, and over here you say one more thing, that it is growth dependent. This particular thing is what? Growth dependent movement. Here growth is happening, but there growth was not happening. So that is growth independent movement. Cool. So these are the points that you need to write, and this is how you will get your 2 marks. So the entire things you do not have to write, make a box and then you can write all these things easily. Cool. And you will easily score your superb marks out there. Okay, going ahead with the next question. What is a synapse? How is an electrical impulse created in a nerve cell? And what is the role of synapse in this context? So basically 3 questions in one. 3-in-1 combo. So let's go part by part. Let's deal with the first part of the question. What is a synapse? So my dear children, when we say that a nervous system is involved and that makes us do things, what do we exactly mean is that in the nervous system we have neurons, and the neurons are passing the signals from one cell to another cell, and that's how we are able to do things. So Basically, suppose this is a neuron over here and there is another neuron right over here. The space that you see is known as synapse. Okay, and what is the use of the space, ma'am? I'll tell you, and with that you will get the answer for the entire question which is there. First of all, this is the structure of a neuron. This is a major cell. Just imagine a normal cell out there, but this cell has some extensions. Okay, these extensions right over here are known as dendrites. One extension is pretty much long, you call it as an axon. Now, at the tip, this region which is there, it is known as axon terminals. Okay, because axons are terminating right over here. And you are seeing this knob-like structure, K-N-O-B, knob-like structures right over here. You know what does it have? It has chemicals being stored over here. Okay, these chemicals are what I call as neurotransmitters. Why? Because they are going to help me in the transmission of signal. Now you might be wondering how, ma'am? Let me tell you. So basically when a signal comes right over here, okay, a nerve impulse comes right over here, it tells that, hey, chemicals, you have to be released. Now the chemicals which are there, they are released in the synapse region, and now from this region they move to the next neuron. How do they move? Basically at the tip of the dendrites over here, they have some receptors. So receptors are like lock and neurotransmitters are like key. So onto the receptors, the neurotransmitters, once they come and bind, my dear children, what will happen? Over here, the entire cell membrane would be having some changes in them. I'm repeating again, the neurotransmitters which are released in the synapse, they go ahead and attached on the receptors of the dendrites, and now there will be some changes happening up over here within the membranes, within this particular membrane. What are the changes, ma'am? Basically, certain channels, ion channels will open up. So imagine that there are so many gates. So some of the gates are going to open up abruptly and they are going to let in some ions inside and make some ions move out. So when all of this thing is happening, my dear children, don't you think there will be a drastic change happening within the cell? Yes. So these signals, these chemicals which come inside, they are going to create an issue over here, or they are going to have some changes in the cell membrane of the neuron, my dear children, such that because of these changes an impulse is being created. Since the ion level is changed, a new impulse is being created and this impulse is going to travel down. When I say an impulse is generated and it is going to travel down, I mean that so many other gates are going to open up one by one when this is moving. And while this is moving, it's an impulse that is going towards the axon terminals, and again the same thing happened, that is the chemicals are being released. So the first part of the question says that what is a synapse? So synapse is what? The tiny junction between the axon terminal, right? The terminal of one neuron and the dendrites of another neuron. Sometimes it won't be another neuron at the end, rather it can be a muscle cell or it can be a gland cell also, such that it says the neuron is saying the muscle cell to contract or relax, or probably the gland cell to release something else, you know. So that thing can also happen, but anyway, synapse is the tiny space between the neuron and the next thing that comes up. Now, it helps in transmission of nerve impulses from one neuron to the next. Okay, and that is the next part of the question. How is electrical impulses created in a nerve cell? So how do you think it is created? So when a neuron receives a stimulus, as in a chemical, okay, an electrical impulse is created due to chemical changes across the neuron's membrane. I told you the attachment happens, there will be some chemical changes in the neuronal membrane which creates an imbalance of ions, my dear children, and that creates an electrical impulse which moves downwards. Okay, this impulse travels along the axon of the neuron towards the axon terminals. Now, what is the role of synapse in this context? When the impulse reaches the end of the terminals, what will happen? It will release some neurotransmitters which you also call as chemical messengers, because they are actually chemicals, but they are transmitting some information, which is why they are known as messengers as well. Okay, these neurotransmitters bind to dendritic receptors present on the next neuron's dendrite. Okay, and this binding creates a new electrical impulse. This is how you need to frame your answer. So you do not need to write the entire thing. Read it. This is for you guys to read it. Okay, you can get the PDF in the WhatsApp channel. Join our WhatsApp channel. The link is given in the description box. So there you try to make it short and write your own answer. Cool, this is just for you to understand things, and that's how the nervous signal or neuronal signal gets transmitted. The next question is a 3-marker. Define reflex action. With the help of a flow chart, show the part of a reflex action such as sneezing. So what is a reflex action? Suppose there is a hot pan. I take away my hat from the hot pan. This is an action. This is what? A reflex action. This is a reflex that I am showing to a hot object out there. Okay, so is it voluntary? Is it voluntary? Can I control it? I can control it if I think a lot about it, but generally, suppose I touch a hot object, I won't think about it, rather I'll just move my hands away. So this is considered to be involuntary in nature. Why is it considered to be involuntary? Because you know, the signal that goes up, it goes to our spinal cord, not to our brain. So the spinal cord which quickly takes the decision of moving away our hand. If our brain is involved, we will think about it. So ma'am, your brain is not at all involved? No, it's not like that. So basically, when a signal comes like that and there is a response to it, a signal is sent to a brain also, such that it stores this in the form of a memory, which is why we always remember how bad it hurt when we touched the hot pan, or we had some experience like that, because our brain is involved, but it is just for storing the information. It is not for the reaction. Reaction is totally controlled by your spinal cord. So can I say that reflex action is a quick, automatic, involuntary response of the body to a stimulus? Okay, which helps in protection from sudden harmful situation. That is the use of reflex action. Suppose I'm not reacting, I'm just keeping my hand like that, I'll burn my hands, right? So this is saving me in some sense. Now example, sneezing is a reflex action. It helps remove unwanted particles or irritants from the nasal passage. So the nasal passage right over here, suppose it has some dust particles getting inside. What is this? This dust particles are stimulus. Okay, this is a stimulus. Now this is going to give a signal and we are going to sneeze. And while we sneeze, all of it is going to move out. You get it? So we are going to see what is the flow chart that we can have. So just a basic understanding of things you should know before I go ahead. And that is, what is this? This is known as a reflex arc. So this is the path that the neurons follow, okay, which induces a reflex action, which causes the action. So first of all, there is stimulus, and the stimulus basically binds on the receptor. Okay, it binds on the receptor of what? Of a neuron which you call as sensory neuron. You need to remember the flow of this, very, very important. Okay, so there's a sensory neuron involved over here. The sensory neuron will be having receptors onto which what is binding? The stimulus is there. Okay, not binding, but the stimulus is making the receptors active of the sensory neuron, and now this neuron is going to end up where? In the spinal cord. In the spinal cord, you have another neuron which you call as interneuron, or you also call this as relay neuron. This is going to come between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron, which actually does the work. So this is in between in the spinal cord, okay, the relay neuron. Now this signal is sent to the motor neuron. The motor neuron is going to tell the effector to please do the action. Suppose it's a muscle cell. Suppose I am touching and I want to move away, so it's the muscle cells which will be the effector organ right over here. So motor neuron is going to the effector, and this is going to give me a response. So you should know the flow of things. First of all, you have stimulus, then sensory neuron, then interneuron, then motor neuron, then effector, then response. Okay, here the sensory neuron is also known as efferent neuron. It's starting with A, like ah. Okay, so this is bringing, right? So this is why ah. Now, motor neuron is known as effector neuron. E for exit. So basically the nervous signal which is there, it is exiting. You can remember like that. And this is, as I said, it is known as the relay neuron. That's all. So how will you show that over here? In sneezing, things are going to be different, right? So stimulus is what? Dust or irritant that enters the nose. Receptors are where? On the nasal lining that detects the irritant. Now, sensory neuron processes the information. So these receptors are of the sensory neuron which are there on the lining of the nasal passage. Now, sensory neuron processes the information. Motor neuron sends the signals to muscles of chest and diaphragm. Effector contracts suddenly, air is forcefully expelled. Expelled on carries message to spinal cord. Okay, just a second. So over here something is being missed. Let me see. So expelled. So sensory neuron processes the information and it goes to the spinal cord. In the spinal cord, my dear children, relay neuron is there. relay neuron is there, and the relay neuron sends the signals to motor neuron. Okay, sends the signals to, so relay, after relay you have motor neuron, and then comes this point that the motor neuron sends the signals to the muscles of the chest and the diaphragm. Now, when it comes, the muscles will be contracting and we will be having a sudden sneeze, which is how the things are being removed. So make sure you write all of it properly, sensory neuron. Then please remember spinal cord is there. You can write like that. Spinal cord, since inside the spinal cord you have the relay neuron, you can just write like this. In bracket you can write relay neuron and then you can give motor neuron. Okay, if you write your answer like this, you will get your marks. Fine, don't do too much of drama, just write the terms, it will be more than enough. But while you write the stimulus, please mention what is the stimulus. Cool? Now, state 2 limitations. This is a 3-marker question again. State 2 limitations of electrical impulses in multicellular organism. Why is chemical communication better than electrical impulses as means of communication between cells in multicellular organism? So basically, they are talking about tell the 2 limitations of electrical impulses. Tell what is the drawback of the nerve impulses that is taking place. And why is chemical communication better than electrical impulses? What is chemical communication? Chemical communication is basically communication in the form of hormones. The hormones are also known as what? Chemical messengers. Okay, the hormones are also chemical messengers. So how is it far better than the electrical impulses? That is the question. So over here, limitations of electrical impulses is the first thing that have to be covered. So these can be transmitted only to the neighboring cells, agreed? The signals can be transmitted only to the neighboring cells, and the neurons have to be connected in chain, so they cannot possibly reach to different non-neural cells directly. That is there. Wherever neuron access is not there, my dear, there it won't be reaching. That is a big problem. Also, electrical communication is very fast but very short-lived. It does not stay for long. So as the message cannot be stored, once the impulses passes, the effect ends immediately. It cannot stay for a longer time. Now suppose I want a longer duration effect. I would take the help of chemical messengers or basically hormones. So there are 2 things. First, it is going to, electrical impulses can work or transmitted only to the nearby cells or the neighboring cells, not to all the cells. Second, electrical communication is very fast, but it is what? Short-lived. It cannot be staying there for a longer time. On the other hand, if we talk about chemical communication, why it is better? Because over here it is through hormones. It is slower. Definitely it is going to be slower but long lasting. Do you know how it is transmitted? So the glands which makes this hormones, they release it into the blood. And the blood is the one that carries everything. And we know that every part of our body is supplied with blood, right? Which is why the hormones can travel easily. But the process is going to be slow. But don't you think the effect is going to be long lasting? Yes. So hormones travel through the blood so they can reach all parts of the body, not just adjacent cells. Hence, chemical communication helps in coordinating various organs and maintaining the long-term responses like growth, metabolism and reproduction. Okay, so everything is maintained with the help of what you call the hormones as well. So actually, both of them are important in their different ways. But over here, you are asked about the limitations, you have to mention that. And sometimes, since we do not study about all these things in our NCERT directly, we tend not to know about it. We do not know. We think that always electrical impulses are better than chemical messengers. So we should know why it is not. Okay? Fine. Now, the next question, define hormone, and hormone should be secreted in precise quantities. We have a feedback mechanism through which this is done. With the help of an example, justify the statement. So first of all, they are asking you to define just an hormone, nothing else. Hormone is what, my dear children? It's a chemical messenger secreted by what? The endocrine glands of our body, the hormone secreting glands of our body, in small amounts directly into the blood. Okay, which control and coordinates various body activities. So over here you can see this is a gland, and this gland basically is releasing blood into the blood, releasing hormones into the blood, and from the blood it is moving where? It is moving to different organs out there. Cool. Now, hormones should be secreted in precise quantities. It should not be very much. It should not be very much. It should not be very little. Which is why, okay, so it should be secreted in precise quantities, which is why we have a feedback mechanism through which this is done. So you are asked, give an example and explain this feedback mechanism. So over here, I have the answer. The feedback, so when the thyroxine hormone secreted by the thyroid gland level decreases in the blood. Okay, so suppose there is a hormone that is thyroxine. Now thyroxine is very important for metabolism of fat, of carbohydrate, everything. This is released by the thyroid gland. Suppose the secretion is very less, it's a problem, right? So at this particular point of time, what happens, my dear children? Our pituitary gland, we have pituitary gland in our brain. This is going to release something that is known as TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. This TSH which is there is going to act on thyroid gland and is going to make release what? Thyroxine. This is going to make release thyroxine. Okay, now, so that is written over here. Let's read it first. When the thyroxine hormone level decreases in the blood, the pituitary gland releases TSH to stimulate the thyroid gland to produce more thyroxine. But when enough thyroxine is produced, the increased level inhibits further release of TSH from the pituitary. So when the amount of thyroxine is now totally fine, you know what happens? Because the high amount is there of thyroxine, it gives a negative feedback and says that, hey, please stop the secretion of TSH. Now the release of TSH will be stopped. This type of feedback mechanism is known as negative feedback. This is known as negative feedback. When the level of hormones is way too much, it will say that, hey, you have to stop the secretion. Okay, that has been written over here. This is called negative feedback mechanism, which ensures that hormone level remains balanced, or which ensures that it is secreted only in precise quantities. So that is the question. Hormone should be secreted in precise quantities. We have a feedback mechanism through which this is done. And how is this done? You give an example and you explain. Cool? Fine. Going ahead to the next question, 7th question out there. Name the source of secretion and one function each of the following animal hormones out there. So we have thyroxine, insulin, growth hormone, etc., etc. So source of secretion is being asked. Who releases thyroxine, my dear children? It is the thyroid gland. Okay, it's known as butterfly gland. It's right over here. It looks like a butterfly, which is why it is known as butterfly gland. Now you have insulin. Who releases insulin? It is the pancreas. Now you have growth hormone. Who releases growth hormone, my dear children? Growth hormone is basically released by the pituitary gland. So what are you being asked? Name the source of secretion, so you know the source of secretion. And also you have to tell the function of each of them. What is the function of thyroxine? I told you it's there for metabolism, for breaking down, for making up of fats, carbohydrates, proteins, everything. Insulin, what does it do? Basically, suppose in our blood there is too much amount of glucose, which you also refer as sugar. In our blood there is too much amount of glucose, then my dear children, the pancreas is going to release insulin, and this insulin is going to catch off all those glucose and convert into something that is known as glycogen. And this glycogen will be stored in the liver. So the level of glucose in the blood goes down. That is a function of insulin, to maintain the level of glucose in our blood. Now growth hormone, we all know growth hormone is responsible for our growth. If it is not there, it leads to dwarfism. If it is very much, it leads to gigantism. Okay, but this growth hormone is released by the pituitary gland. We'll come to the next part of the question. Before that, just see this, okay? So thyroxine secreted by thyroid gland regulates metabolism of fats, proteins, carbohydrates. Insulin secreted by pancreas helps in regulating blood sugar level, and growth hormone secreted by pituitary gland controls the growth and development of the body. Now, what are the plant hormones? Where are they synthesized? What happens when growing plant detects light? So 3 parts of the question again. So over here, plant hormones are what? Chemical messengers that control growth and responses to stimuli. That's all. Basically, you can say that is responsible for growth and development. That's all. Now, the next part. Where are they synthesized? Where do you think the hormones are synthesized? Because plants, in the case of plants, they do not have endocrine glands, right? So where do you think they are synthesized? They are synthesized in the regions where the cells are very actively dividing. For example, shoot tip, root tip, young leaves, everywhere. Okay, shoot tip, root tip, young leaves, everywhere you will see that they are being synthesized. Now the next part of the question, that is, what happens when a growing plant detects light? What do you think happens when a growing plant detects light? So over here you have a picture. So suppose this is a tip of the plant, my dear children, and here you have the sun. In this case, the auxin molecules, the auxin is a hormone, okay? Auxin is a hormone that is evenly distributed at the tip. Suppose the sun is towards that side, okay? Sun is towards that side. Now what will happen? The auxin will be moving to the shaded region. What region? Shaded region, where the sun is not there. Why do you think it is happening like that? Basically, the auxin moves this side, and auxin is a hormone that is responsible for cell elongation. It causes the cell, suppose the cell is like this, now it will be elongated. So over here, since the level of auxin is way much, what happens, my dear children? The cells which are there, they are going to get elongated. And when it happens on one side, when cell elongation happens only on one side, what will happen? All of them will move towards that side. Okay, the shoot which is there, it will be moving towards that side such that the sun's rays would be there here, and the plant growth can happen properly. Okay, this is positive phototropism. Phototropism because sun is basically giving light. Okay, so this is an example of phototropism. And why positive? Because it is moving towards that direction. Fine. So how do you frame this answer? Let's see. So when growing plant detects light, the hormone auxin moves towards the shaded side, causing the cells there to elongate more, and the plant bends towards the light. This is what happens when a growing plant detects the light. Done? Now next question, question number 8. Just a second. Yeah. Analyze the given situation and interpret the possible reasons for each. Let's analyze. Iodine deficiency in diet increases the possibility of a disease of swollen neck in a person. You have to interpret the possible reason. So if at all I am not taking enough amount of iodine, there is a swelling up over here. Why do you think this swelling happens? Basically over here, what do you have? You have the butterfly gland, that is the thyroid gland. And thyroid gland is responsible for the release of thyroxine. You know, thyroxine, or you also call triiodothyronine, basically it is made up of iodine. Iodine is a major component of these hormones. If at all I do not have iodine, do you think this particular hormone will be made properly? No. So there is deficiency of it, which is why basically we have a swelling right over here. So iodine deficiency in diet increases the possibility of a disease. Why? Because less secretion, it leads to less secretion of thyroxine by thyroid gland, leading to goiter, a disease with swollen neck. The name of the disease is what? Goiter. The next part of the question. Some people in population may have very short heights, dwarfs. Why? Because I told you growth hormone is not there, deficiency of growth hormone is there. So very short height or dwarfism occurs due to deficiency of growth hormone secreted by the pituitary gland. Now next part of the question. Thick facial hairs develop in boys at the age 10 to 12 years. Why? Because when they hit puberty, there's a level of hormone that increases way too much, and that hormone is testosterone or the androgens. Androgens are the male sex hormones. So over here, thick facial hair in boys develop due to increased secretion of testosterone, the male sex hormone secreted by the testes during puberty. Cool. Now we have, this is A part of the question, you have B part, and for B part you have another OR question. So we are going part by part. We are going to see this question first. Explain 2 reasons which necessitates the need of chemical communication in multicellular organism. So the point that we studied earlier, remember the point that we studied earlier, what is the use of chemical messengers? Basically, even though they are slow, they have long lasting effect, and also they move all around our body. They move all around our body, giving the signal. So it's there for coordination. So hormones help coordinate functions of different organs that are not directly connected by nerves. But blood is there everywhere, so it can go. For long-lasting effect, chemical messengers act slowly, but their effect lasts longer, maintaining steady body functions like growth and metabolism. So that is the reason. So since you got to know the answer of one question, you are able to answer the other question as well. See? Now differentiate between voluntary and involuntary action. That is the first part of B and the second part of B as well. Define reflex action with the help of flow diagram. Show the correct sequence of path of nerve impulse from the place of its origin. So this question we solved it initially. Reflex action. What is reflex action? It is involuntary automatic action that is there, okay, which is in response to a stimulus, and basically it will be very fast, and our spinal cord is involved. All of it you have to write, and then you show the whole flow chart. First you have the stimulus basically acts on the receptors of the sensory neuron, and the sensory neuron basically sends the signals to the spinal cord, where you have the relay neuron, and that to motor neuron, and then an effector organ, and then response. So you have to show the flowchart like that. The new question over here is differentiate between voluntary and involuntary action. Voluntary means something that you can control. Involuntary means something that you cannot control. So how do you say? So voluntary action is controlled by the brain. Okay. Involuntary action is controlled by the spinal cord or the brainstem. So basically over here, or rather putting down this particular point, you can directly go with the next point, that is basically we are able to control it to some sense. Over here, this is not controlled by us. We cannot control it. So done with conscious control happens without conscious control. That is there. An example, writing, walking, etc. Over here, example is what? Heartbeat, breathing, etc. So instead of writing this point right over here, the safer option for over here would be writing this, and you can say the parts of the brain which are involved over here. So for voluntary action, okay, so for voluntary action you have your cerebellum and things like that. For involuntary action you have your medulla, all of those parts. You can mention that if at all you need. So these are the things that you can do. Okay? Fine. Works. Going ahead to the next question, the 4 marker, this is a case study based question, okay. So in life, there are certain changes in the environment called stimuli to which we respond appropriately. Touching a flame suddenly is a dangerous situation for us. One way is to think consciously about the possibility of burning and then moving the hand. But our body has been designed in such a way that we save ourselves from such situations immediately rather than thinking. Right. So name the action by which we protect ourselves in situation mentioned above and define it. So reflex action, again, you see how many questions have come. Now write the role of motor and the relay neuron. So motor neuron basically transmits the signal from the spinal cord to the effector organ. The relay neuron comes in between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron transmitting the signal. We talk about that. Now what are the 2 types of nervous system in the human body? Name the components of each of them. So what are the 2 types of systems in the human body, my dear children? Central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central nervous system consists of your brain and your spinal cord. That's all. Peripheral nervous system consists of any nerves that arise from this. For example, brain gives rise to cranial nerves, and the spinal cord gives rise to the spinal nerves. Okay, you call them as spinal nerves. So you have cranial nerves and you have spinal nerves. So that transmits all the information all throughout our body. Fine. So central nervous system is components is what? Brain and spinal cord. Peripheral nervous system, you have components such as cranial nerves and the spinal nerves. Khatam. Now you have one more question or question. Which part of the human brain is responsible for thinking, picking up a pencil, controlling blood pressure, controlling hunger and things like that? Do you have any idea? Well, for thinking, okay, all the voluntary action that you have cerebrum. You have cerebrum. This is the part that is there for thinking. Okay, thinking or logical aspects of, if at all you want to find the logical aspect of certain things, you need the cerebrum. That is the largest part of the brain. It is the part of forebrain. Going ahead, picking up a pencil. For picking up a pencil, what do you need? You think about it. Controlling blood pressure. For controlling blood pressure, this is an involuntary action, and who is responsible for that? We studied in the first part of the chapter, it's medulla oblongata. Controlling hunger, this also you might not know. Hunger, thirst, sex drive, everything is controlled by another part which is known as hypothalamus. It is known as hypothalamus. Always remember this. Okay, so hypothalamus is a part of our forebrain. Thalamus, hypothalamus and cerebrum, they are all part of our forebrain. And over here you have all the answers. So thinking is cerebrum. Picking up a pencil. Okay, picking up a pencil, it is cerebellum. Controlling blood pressure is medulla oblongata. Controlling hunger, it is hypothalamus. Okay, so hypothalamus is responsible for hunger, thirst, sleep, everything. So please remember it like that. So all your physiological functions are controlled by the hypothalamus. Cool. And for picking up a pencil, you need the balance to pick it up, which is why it is cerebellum. Okay, so that is also there. Yes. Now, okay. Now I have one homework question for you guys. Well, I have solved this homework question in the live session. So if at all you have not watched it, go and watch it and be there for the live from tomorrow. So which among the following is not a neural action controlled by the part of human brain labeled X in the figure given above? Oh my God, I have not mentioned the X. Okay, so let me name X. If at all you know X, you can tell the answer, right? So X is, now you tell me which among them is not a neural action controlled by the part of the human brain labeled X, or basically what is X? Medulla. So you have to tell among this, and if at all you know the answer, what should you do? You should be commenting it down. So please comment it down right now. I really want to see who knows the answer for this question. And with that, we end our today's session. I hope it was helpful. If at all it was helpful, definitely let me know in the comment section. And my dear children, if you have any queries, please do not be worried to ask me. You can ask me whenever you want. Okay, so please do that, and I hope you had fun. Please take care of yourselves. You are going to ace your board examination. Bye-bye.